I'm continuing a montage of videos. The name's Nicholas Barrett. This one is about policing. It's not actually an anti-police show, believe it or not. To solve something, we're not anti, we're actually pro-police, but we're against the behavior of some. I must say I have friends who are in the police force. We must applaud the excellence of some, but against the behavior of others. We have a dysfunction based upon a framework that certain people do certain things based upon their color. It's called stereotyping and profiling. I had an incident, believe it or not, as a white reverend like this a few months ago in Manhattan Beach. I was getting some pet food from a store. I realized I was surrounded by 6 police cars and dragged out, arms put behind my back, and I asked to speak to them. What exactly is this about? Shut up, get on the car, we're not going to tell you. So for an hour they ransacked my car and we had a dialogue. The guy said to me, you know, you were slow getting out of your car, and I said I wasn't expecting this. We could have shot you. And he actually went pew, pew. You never know, could have been a shot reverend. So they actually played with me, and an hour later, the only reason they gave me was we profiled you. You drive a certain brand of car, and you wear a track jacket, and we thought you were a European gang leader. They had no pictures. They just went on an assumption. And a friend of mine who's an African-American activist, Gerald Giggs, said, welcome to America, you were black for an hour. Profiling doesn't work if it's based upon a racist nature. We have a racist past, and all of those things transcend into our current present. So profiles are old. It's an archaic way of judging people who could be doctors, butchers, candlestick makers. We cannot simply judge them by the exterior. We must have a more efficient police force other than just reacting. People's lives are at stake. And I want to talk about racist police and the reason why I'm feeling there's a problem. About a year ago, I've seen thousands of videos of African Americans and probably 50 of people being shot unarmed. There was a gentleman called Terrence Crutchner, had his hands up in the air in a white shirt, obviously no weapon, against an SUV. It was on a freeway in Tulsa, I believe. Helicopter 1,000 feet up with a white police officer saying, bad dude, man, he looks like a real bad dude. How do you know if you're 1,000 feet up in a helicopter, guy's got a white shirt, that he's a real bad dude? He could have been a veterinarian for all we know. He knew it because that's implicit racism, and that's judging lives on the street based upon that precept. But we've got to go further. There's actually a gentleman called Alton Sterling, 37 years old, father of 5, under suspicion of selling videos, maybe with a gun. That may be the case, but when I saw the video, he was on the floor, handcuffed, immobile at that point. 2 white police officers, I think one of them said the N-word, I'm pretty sure I'm right, we'll have to ask Sean King about that. And they basically shot him point blank 3 times. We need to have consequences. If I have a uniform and I base it off a precept that a black person's bad because that's what I've learned, and that's maybe why I'm in the police force, then we've got to realize that system doesn't work. I have no consequences, so I can judge somebody on the street and maybe give them the death sentence. But it goes deeper than this. I'm actually a psychologist also. If I've been abused as a child, when I get married, sometimes I can abuse my dog or abuse my wife. But someone who is abused as a child follows a generational path of becoming a policeman, but they have the racist mentalities. Every time they see somebody of another color, they pull a trigger. And I've seen this. You can look at all these videos. This is not made up. This is factual on Twitter. They're real live incidents. I've seen black people being beaten 50 times and killed with a stick.
Action.
There was even an incident in a New York prison that 2 prison guards put a screwdriver up an African-American's rectum. Yes, he got paid $4 million compensation, but it doesn't change the fact that the fear that that's put in the system and the fear that that puts in people. LeBron James, the athlete, spoke of his, not of concern for himself, because he's a global athlete, but for his children one day who could be driving home from a party. If they're driving a car, they could open their window and get shot on their way home. We must have a police force that protects you and also me. Not dependent upon the color of our skin, but dependent upon a mentality. We need to change the framework from carte blanche for murder with a gun, for consequences. If I murder someone who's handcuffed, an African American, on the floor and shoot them 3 times, there needs to be a consequence. Consequence will stop behavior, but a mindset change will stop the screwdriver being put up a rectum and people just being shot point blank. This is a mindset cultural thing, guys. We need to change it. We need a new framework of hiring, disciplining, and also mentality. Thank you very much. There will be more. This video is about self and others' perception. How I see myself is how society's framed me. What comes on my doorstep every day and informs me of who I am is sometimes the identity I take. In other words, the oppressed person takes on the identity of the oppressor, and the oppressor takes on the identity of who they are in their superiority. I want to give you an example of how this manifests. A friend of mine said to me, she was a black African-American lady at the time of all of the shootings I was telling you about on Twitter. She came to me and said, I can't help being African-American. I can't help being black, and she was crying. That is not where we need to be, guys. We are there because we've taken the identity that we're worse than a white person, that we're somehow lesser because society's framed us that way. That is an example I'm giving you, someone who is so disgusted in themselves. We need to celebrate diversity. We need to celebrate your uniqueness and my uniqueness. We're all in one country contributing with the 5 liters of blood, with an artificial wall that's around you and me. There really is no barrier other than a societally conditioned mind. I want to give you another example. I had a Twitter exchange with somebody, and they said to this white person that they were communicating with, you know what, I am African American, let me know what country I was stolen from so I can go back, but in the meantime, do you want anything from Target? That just brought tears to my eyes. It's sad, but very true, guys. They don't feel home in their own home because of how they've been made to feel from generation to generation to generation. And if you're white and you're feeling uncomfortable, it means you have implicit racism because you're reacting to the truth that I'm telling you. I want to talk to you also about meme. A meme is a learned behavior. I don't come out of the womb with it, I learn it through my exposure, and I base my precepts on things I've learned and heard and taken on board as my truth from media, from schooling. I want to give you an example of how dialogue is powerful. A tipping point. 20 years ago, if I sat with you at Starbucks and said there'd be nobody smoking, you'd think I'm crazy. But there was a dialogue, so eventually from that dialogue, which was platforms like mine, no, I wasn't around them, but platforms with a heart for people, because I have a heart for all people, they got into talking how bad this was for communities and society. So eventually there was smoking in half the restaurant and not the other half. Remember when that happened? Now there's smoking nowhere, and now sometimes 25 feet away from a restaurant there is no smoking. This all happened because somebody started a conversation about a behavior that was not healthy. I could be starting a conversation telling you that racism isn't healthy because it limits and stymies African Americans, because if their mindset and they're in fear and they're limited and they're crying about who they are rather than celebrating who they are, that is plain wrong. White folk, that's got to stop. We need to get into a dialogue. We need to reach a tipping point, and things change exponentially. If I talk about cigarettes and I change that because people are getting killed, why can't I talk about the health and life of people? We're talking about lives, not smoking. Smoking is bad for health, and so is racism. We need to talk to shift it. It can happen. The greatest barrier to us making change is thinking it's been jacked up for so long that it can't happen. And I'm telling you this from my heart, it can happen, and I've been doing this for 10 years and hoping for this moment to share this with you. It can happen if you break the vision of a concept that you put in a box. You need to have a growth mindset. Take on the smoking idea because it works. The only way we can change things is through a dialogue and reaching a tipping point. We need to activate, not just sit back and procrastinate. We need to not resist. We need to begin by raising awareness to shift culture. There will be more videos. It's been great. This is going to be a fun video, part of a vignette, part of a series I've just shot. It's called Six Pack. You may ask, how can health have something to do with what we're trying to do? It actually has a lot. I'm going to bullet point this for you. Individually, how are we going to change racial health? How I look at myself in the mirror in the morning. What's my part that I'm playing? Change all starts with you. Collectively, what are our friends in communities, having interracial meetings, dialogue between people collectively, locally, in schools, in colleges, in police holes, in universities, that's locally. Nationally is on TV. TV is really an important medium because a lot of us watch that TV all the time, and we base what's right and wrong on the TV. So it's very critical that we're exposing people to things that we want to change in our community, giving them dialogue that will inspire and create change. A new framework. We need to have a correct schooling syllabus. Our history from 1619, yes, it was history, but it's gone from generation to generation, and a lot of the precepts and decisions we make have been passed on through that history. So we need to have a correct history syllabus, not a sham one. We need to change the framework of hiring and firing of police officers, so it's no longer carte blanche for killing an unarmed man who's black and on the street. We need to have consequences that will change, directly impact behavior. The actions need to be met with the correspondent sentencing. We need to do that. The correct judicial system changes. We have about 800 judges and only 104 are African American. So they're 8 times more unlikely if they're African Americans to get a correct sentencing from a free mindset. District attorneys, the judicial system. In America, African Americans are 5 times greater in their incarceration than whites, 10 times in Oklahoma and New Jersey. Yes, you got the medal, Oklahoma and New Jersey, but the wrong type of medal. That's staying in regression. We need to no longer deny and condone it. We need to approach it, apprehend it, and overcome it. We no longer need to just resist. We need to resist to raise awareness, but we need to overcome the causality of racism. We no longer need to put it in a carpet. We need to realize that all people are sourced the same. The only difference is the shell, but we need to have a tapestry of unity, not one of dysfunctionality. We'll never move forward if we react. We'll react and we'll build reaction and resistance. I hope this has stimulated you. There will be more coming in the short period of time. I hope this is an appetizer to an entree that will create societal change. Thank you for listening.
Camera rolling. 1, 2, 3, action.
This is the last one of the vignette of videos I've done. It's called Six Pack for Change. Six pack for change, you may ask, it's a funny question, but yeah, it's health in society, not just health in your body. Six pack for change is individually. Starts with you in the morning when you're looking at the mirror. How do you see yourself in society? That's really where it starts with. Individually. Collectively means with friends, in cafes, in bars. What is your conversation like with people? How are we communing? Do you have friends that look different than you? Are you multiracial in your choices of the society you do and the things you do? That's collectively. Locally would be in schools, in colleges, in police meetings, locally. We can have conversations locally. Nationally is where it's really important. Nationally is through television, through radio shows, shows that can really impact people in a bigger way, because things we see on TV we take on board as being reality. So we need to have talks, just like American Race, it started a dialogue. We need to have those talks nationally. We need to look at our structure. New framework needs to be set, a framework where they're not basing things upon the color of your skin, that we're looking at people and celebrating people for being an integral part of a multi-racial, functional society. That's a framework, new framework of police hiring. So people that have been abused don't get hired on the police force. It's hard to look into, but consequences. We need to have a new judicial system. We need to have consequences for police who are killing people unarmed. Point blank, that needs to change. We need to have sentences that match actions. That's what we need to change. We need to change our educational syllabus so more people understand the history of 1619. I speak to many people who haven't even heard of the history I've spoken to in these previous videos. You can go back and access the videos before this one. It'll tell you more about it. I've had to be very brief, trying to give you as much as possible. But it starts off with that. It starts off with a new cultural mentality that will only start with a dialogue. The same mentality we have today was started by things people heard. So dysfunction was created through things being normalized for too long and condoned and denied. The way they'll be changed is people being provoked and inspired through what they see and hear. If you hear someone being racist, approach them. Say, hey, you know what, why are you saying that? Be critical in your thinking. Challenge your own thoughts. Challenge the thoughts of culture around you. Question media. That's how it happens. Otherwise, we'll walk around blindly just assuming it's been dysfunctional, so it will remain that way. The greatest barrier is in you individually thinking it's like that. You are more powerful than you think to change. The change must be in you that will impact individuals. If everybody thinks they can't make a change, it never will happen. So take on board what I've said in these videos. This is a start, this is a trigger, a catalyst that will start a forest fire. It's powerful and it will be with you again. We will discuss a lot more. Thank you for listening in.